At some point in our lives, or multiple, we've all been annoyed at games, particularly because of specific enemies that they're throwing at us, the kind of enemies that quickly get on your nerves for some reason or another. There's been more than a few of those games over the years, and here we're going to talk about a few. ZUBAT, Pokemon. If you've spent even a couple of minutes in a cave in a Pokemon game, especially one of the earlier ones, you've cursed out at the sight of a ZUBAT. These pesky Pokemon appear with far too much regularity, forcing players to exit out of battles what feels like one every few seconds. If you don't have any repels handy, you're in for a true test of patience. Man-Eating Insect, Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7, like other games in the series, finds many ways to create tension, and it doesn't always do that with scary stuff. Some things, like those big flying insects in the latter half of the game, just create tension by being a nuisance. Wasting ammo on them is pointless, but fighting them off when they come at you in swarms can be particularly tricky, especially if you're all out of fuel for your flamethrower. MOTHS, Resident Evil Code Veronica. Anyone who's played through Code Veronica is well aware of how much of a nuisance these moths can be. One corridor in particular is full of them, and it feels like it's been designed to piss players off. They're all too fond of poisoning you, but their erratic movement makes it very tricky to aim and shoot without wasting some bullets. Oh, and they respawn if you leave the area, as if they weren't irritating enough already. JACKAL snipers, Halo 2. The JACKAL snipers in Halo 2, especially on Legendary difficulty, are, well, legendary in the Halo fanbase at this point. They might just be among the most ridiculously overpowered enemies in Halo history, in fact. Expertly skilled doesn't even begin to describe how good these long-range enemies are, and we're willing to bet that they've been the cause of more than a few broken controllers. The Flood, Halo Combat Evolved. Another Halo enemy that's nearly as annoying, albeit in an entirely different way, is the Flood. Halo Combat Evolved's unexpected turn when we first discover the true nature of the Ring and the Flood is an unforgettable moment. But actually fighting the Flood is, well, not always fun. It doesn't help that a bulk of these firefights are set in terribly repetitive corridors, not to mention the awful library, making these encounters seem like even more of a drag. Weepers, Dishonored. Weepers aren't exactly the most beloved Dishonored enemies. Many players find them quickly off-putting, in fact, and that's not just because of what they look like. They're more adept at spotting you than many other enemies, which means that they might lead you down a path that eventually turns into a Chaos playthrough, which of course only creates more Weepers. Avoiding them or dealing with them in non-lethal ways is the best way forward. Creepers, Minecraft. Sort of an obvious choice for a list such as this one. Creepers have been the bane of many Minecraft players' existence for years, and it's easy to see why. These self-exploding enemies can destroy long stretches of hard work in a matter of seconds, and what makes it worse is that so often you don't even see or hear them coming. When you do, often it's all too late. Ghiran, Onimusha 3. This particular enemy type often appears on Onimusha fans' list of most infuriating foes to fight against. Their very physical form and the way that they spin and move around makes them a trick to deal with as it is, but their ability to avoid souls, which they absolutely love doing, makes them an even bigger threat. When they come at you in a group, you're probably in for a headache. Ghostfish, Ninja Gaiden. In all likelihood, every Ninja Gaiden player has been tortured by those damn ghostfish at some point. On paper, these enemies shouldn't be too challenging, they die in one hit and they're not too physically intimidating. But they come at you in large swarms, and they move quickly, and they respawn. When they latch on, they do a surprising amount of damage. Dealing with them tends to be extremely tricky, unless you've had a lot of practice, and most people don't have the patience for that much practice. ICTHYORNIS, Ark Survival Evolved. Don't be fooled by the seemingly harmless appearance of these giant birds. They're an absolute menace. Honestly, it's hard to argue against the notion that they've just been put there to get a rise out of you. They'll swoop down at you, steal your stuff, eat your food, and then drop everything else on the ground around you, merrily flying away to terrorize someone else, while you're left to pick up what's left of your things. Poison headcrabs, Half-Life 2. Another obvious choice for a list like this. Poison headcrabs can be found in abundance in Half-Life 2, and they're never exactly easy to deal with. They'll latch onto your head and bring you to within an inch of death, and their agile movement means that there's always a high chance of wasted ammo. They might not be the biggest or most durable foes you fight in the game, but boy are they a big threat. Standard Bearers, Warhammer Vermintide 2. Standard Bearers, introduced in the Winds of Magic DLC, have walked all over Vermintide 2 players with far greater frequency than most other enemies in the game. They throw almost too much at you to deal with. They buff up the health of every beast of chaos in the vicinity, making the easy ones tougher and the tough ones an absolute nightmare, while they also summon hordes of other enemies. Put together, it can be more than a little overwhelming. Winter Lanterns, Bloodborne. Enemy design is one of From Software's biggest strengths, but not all enemies in their games are winners. Winter Lanterns in Bloodborne, for instance, can be absolutely infuriating at times. They'll get you frenzied, quickly grab hold of you with a grab attack, and then chop your health down to 0 with startling speed. Unless you grab the parry timing for the grab just right, or unless you have 0 insight, dealing with these foes takes some patience. FINGERCREEPERS, Elden Ring. Honestly, dealing with FINGERCREEPERS isn't particularly challenging once you know what they're weak to, which is fire or bleeding. If you fight them with that in mind, you won't find them that tough to deal with. But their design, the way they move, it's extremely unsettling. Looking at them is bad enough, but when they grab you, that can make your stomach turn. Shinobi Hunters, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Shinobi Hunters in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice are technically only mini-bosses, but as many people will tell you, they're easily among the most frustrating fights in the entire game. Like most challenging enemies in Sekiro, the biggest threat to deal with is their vast and deadly movesets, with a number of attacks where nailing down the timing can require a lot of trial and error. Once you get into the flow of the fight, things go much easier, but that can take many, many tries. Basilisks, Dark Souls. Honestly, on a repeat playthrough, dealing with basilisks in Dark Souls isn't that much of an issue, especially if you have the right build or focus on ranged combat. On your first playthrough of the game though, chances are that these weird little guys caused you quite a bit of trouble. They spray out clouds that curse you if you step in them, which means falling in there with them is very difficult to recover from. Wheel Skeletons, Dark Souls. Let's stick with From Software enemies for just a little while longer, because we can't really not talk about Dark Souls Wheel Skeletons here. Everything they do just makes you hate them more. Their devastating wheel spin attack isn't the easiest to dodge. The attack deals a lot of damage and can even break your guard, and often it can even stun lock you. If these enemies come at you in a group, 9 times out of 10, it's game over. BURERS, S.T.A.L.K.E.R, Call of PRIPYAT. S.T.A.L.K.E.R, Call of PRIPYAT is a game that, by its very nature, has plenty of creepy enemies. And BURERS are creepy, sure, but they're also quite annoying. The moment you lock eyes with one, your screen will instantly become distorted, and within seconds, you'll begin taking surprising amounts of damage unless you find a way to escape. Worse still, they can even yank whatever weapon you're holding and drop it to the ground. Cliff Racers, The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Cliff Racers, like so many irritating flying enemies in games over the years, aren't annoying so much because they're challenging to deal with, but because there's just so many of them. Morrowind has many areas that are just full of these nasty little creatures who'll flit around and attack you in swarms. For certain builds, especially those that focus on ranged combat or short-range weapons, they can be quite tricky to deal with. Murlocs, World of Warcraft. These iconic enemies pretty much had to be in here. A large chunk of World of Warcraft's many millions of players have been bugged by these weird fish monsters. They're not particularly tough to deal with, but when they come at you in massive swarms, they feel endless. Oh, and that annoying sound they make. That has a way of burrowing right into your skull. Honey Badgers, Far Cry 4. Pretty much every Far Cry 4 player has at one point wondered aloud, what the hell is wrong with these honey badgers? Because those things are more ferocious and aggressive than they have any right to be. Even running into massive bears or entire outposts of enemies won't provoke the sort of reaction in players as a lone, seemingly not so dangerous honey badger will. MALBORO, Final Fantasy. Easily one of the most annoying enemies we've ever faced in a Final Fantasy game, if not the most, and yet we end up crossing paths with these in so many games. Their signature bad breath attack can inflict any number of status effects on your entire party in one go, from sleep or silence to poison or slow, which, as you might imagine, is a pain to deal with. If one of these manages to get an attack in before you've had a chance to run from the battle, you're probably in for a tough time. Guardians, Dead Space. Dead Space is full of enemies that we love going up against, but it also has a couple that we're not exactly big fans of. Guardians fall in the latter category without a doubt, not really because they're irritating in any way, but because they're just so unsettling. Their creepy visual design, the unsettling sounds they create, the way they look like they're still vaguely alive. The fewer of them we have to deal with, the better. Bats, Terraria. Most Terraria players will tell you that bats, in their many forms, are easily the most annoying enemy type in the entire game. Hell bats, ice bats, giant bats, cave bats, you name it, they're all extremely annoying. They fly around with erratic movements, they love to pester you in numbers, and they're quite common, making them even more of a headache. So what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.